You don't need to live on a farm to grow a lot of food for your family. We live on a small suburban lot. Our garden is about 30 by 30 feet, and a lot of that is taken up by a shed. But we have some really good strategies to grow a lot of food in a really small space, and I want to share them with you today. So one of those strategies is to grow vertically, start thinking in a third dimension. I'm standing underneath a cattle panel trellis that's growing a grapevine, but we really grow a lot of our vining crops on some sort of trellis or vertical support system. If you think about plants like cucumbers, melons, and vining squash plants, they really take up a lot of space. I mean, we could probably plant 4 plants in our entire yard if we didn't think vertically. If we come this way, we can look at some of the other plants we're growing vertically on these cattle panel trellises. So we have our cucumber plants here. You can see they're growing above my head. I'm 6'2", so these trellises are maybe a little over 7 feet tall. And we start the plants on the ground just next to the trellis, and then we train them to climb over the top. We use these little tomato trellis clips, and the nice thing about vining plants is because they naturally grab to the trellis, you really only need a few clips per plant. We start them off down low, then we just remove that clip and keep moving it higher and higher to train these to go the way we want them up the trellis. And just in a slightly different part of the garden, we have our cantaloupe plant grown on a similar cattle panel trellis. It's trained the same way, using the clips that we talked about. And you can see we've already got some nice cantaloupe growing here. For a fruit about the size of a cantaloupe, you really don't need any sort of support system when you're growing them vertically. But we have grown watermelon in the past, and for those you need to make some sort of hammock or support for the fruit, otherwise it will put too much stress on the vine. Now we have a slightly different strategy for our tomato plants. Tomato plants are vines, but they don't naturally climb or cling to structures. And so for our tomato plants, we have made a string trellising system. And this system consists of a cattle panel that's horizontal or parallel to the ground, and it's suspended about 5.5 feet above the ground using T-posts. What we then do is we single stem the tomatoes. So we remove all the suckers and just have the tomato be a single vine, and use those same tomato clips, they're trellis clips, to hold the tomato to the vine. Tomatoes can get pretty large, and so when they reach the top of the 5.5 foot trellis, we let out more string from the spool of string that we have above. And this sort of leans and lowers the plant and allows it more space to grow. I think in retrospect, I probably would have made the top of the trellis a little bit taller. So if I was going to modify that, I probably would have made it 7 or 8 feet tall. But one thing this allows us to do is we have 18 tomato plants, and they're all growing in a 16 by 4 foot bed. Because the tomato plants are single strung, they take up less square footage in our garden, and then they utilize that vertical space. Single stemming the tomato plants also allows for really good airflow through between the plants to minimize disease. And here in southwest Ohio, we do get a lot of rain and humidity in the summer, so we need to make sure we have good strategies to minimize fungal and bacterial diseases on our plants. So another strategy for maximizing your yields in a small space is to make sure that you are always growing something useful in the space that you have. And succession planting is a really good way to do this. Right behind me we have a row cover, and that row cover used to cover our lettuce plants that we planted out in early April. And those generally do okay until about the middle of June, and then it just gets too hot here. If you're interested in seeing how we grow lettuce, I'll post a link above so you can see that video. After we remove the lettuce plants, we like to plant another warm weather crop that still has time to give us some production. So underneath here we have green beans as well as zucchini. We like to keep the row cover on because this is actually a second set of zucchini. Despite us having some pretty good strategies to combat squash vine borer, and I'll also post a link to that video, we always lose them eventually. We lose that fight. So we actually grow a second set under cover here. I'm going to take this row cover off so you can see those. So this second set is just starting to produce fruit. In fact, a bee just came in and swooped in to try to find the opportunity to pollinate these. But we do need to start removing this row cover in order for the bees to come in. Unfortunately, that also allows squash vine borer to get to it. But at this point in later July, they're a little less active, and really the plant should survive most of the rest of the growing season and give us a lot of good zucchini. Another easy succession planting that we do is determinate tomatoes after a garlic harvest. So we usually plant our garlic in the fall and it's harvested in early summer. And that does give enough time to get a good tomato crop in. But we generally like to plant determinate type tomatoes for that. They generally will give you all of their fruit sooner. It's about the same amount of time to get your first fruit as an indeterminate or vining tomato, which you saw on our trellis system earlier. But the determinate type tomatoes are a bushy tomato. You don't prune them, and you're going to get all your tomatoes in a shorter period of time. So generally they're great for canning. So we have celebrity tomatoes here. It's a nice hybrid disease resistant tomato, good for both slicing and canning. And one last strategy is to think beyond the vegetable garden. I'm out here on our patio, and our patio is surrounded by berry bushes. They act as a privacy hedge, but they're also really fun for the kids to just go and pick some ripe fruit when they see it. We've got some raspberries right here. Nice little summer snack. I hope these tips for maximizing your growing space were helpful for you. If you did find them helpful, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. It'd be great to support us. We'd appreciate it. Happy gardening, everyone.